seeking prized pollen within the corolla. In the bright morning, the butterflies take flight. A sunray kisses the head of a rose, which stirred won't admit having lost its sleep. A perfume spreads beneath the tall palm trees, a fragrance of spring, of frenzied things. And I fill my arms with blossoming flowers, with jasmine and roses and lilies and lilacs, and listen, charmed, to the water's murmur, to the bird song in the branches. The skies are erupting, the sun is on fire, and I feel in my soul all this spring singing. Now, it's not spring singing here in New England, but we're projecting forward. To no longer think. To no longer think. To no longer feel. To let one's heart go adrift. With no heavy sorrow, with no sharp pain. To be nothing. To disappear. All the shivers, all the fevers, all the unconsoled cries, to stifle them and hold back the wrongs that burn one's lips. To hide one's great pride from everyone. To not seek comfort from another soul. To keep one's mourning to oneself. To stay far from everything. To live without joy and without regret. This must be the key to bliss. Vague bliss, mystery-free. But I don't want this ease. It is too bland for me. I want to see the jasmine blooming and breathe in the scent of lilacs. I want to keep in my chest a heart beating with desire, even if I die of divine ecstasy and joy. I can't see the day break without all of me trembling. I must know this, and I must love. Life is a hymn of love. Tropical Night. And I will read to you the original, Faubert's original, entitled Soir Tropical, so you can hear her wonderful sound, her rhymes, her meter. And then I'll read to you my English translation. Soir tropical. Le soir est lumineux, le soir est tendre et beau, le soleil s'est éteint, la lune est sur les roses, une langueur pénètre au cœur même des choses, les grands palmiers noirs rêvent au bord de l'eau. Les jasmins ont mêlé leurs branches étoilées aux lianes en fleurs. La laine de l'été caresse les fruits lourds. La grave volupté laisse traîner son voile au détour des allées. Là-bas, sur le chemin, pas un chant, pas un bruit. Rien ne trouble la paix d'un bonheur qu'on écoute. Viens sentir les parfums sur le bord de la route et respirer mon âme éparse dans la nuit. Tropical night. The night is luminous. The night is tender and beautiful. The sun has obscured itself. The moon rests on the roses. A languor enters the very heart of things, and the tall black palms dream at the water's edge. The jasmine have mixed their star-studded branches with lianas in bloom. Summer's breath caresses the heavy fruit. The dense sensuality lets its long veil linger along the sinuous paths. Over there, on the way, not a song, not a sound. Nothing disturbs the peace of a joy we listen to. Come, take in the fragrances at the road's edge and breathe in my soul, spread across the night. Flaubert writes a lot of love poems. They're very raw. All right, this is one of them. In French, it's Mon amour attendez. In English, Wait My Love. When you forget that you held me captive in your arms like a thing that was yours. When you grow tired of my sweet love, wait until night falls to tell me. Then you won't see my undone face, my sorry eyes, my trembling mouth. The dark will veil my crushing sorrow. Wait until night falls completely. Wait until the wind makes the trees wail and the birds of the woods weep in their nests. Then you won't hear my sobs or the cry of my heart colder than marble. Wait until thunder darkens the skies and it pours nearby on the road. In the sad night, you'll mistake, no doubt, the tears of my eyes with the tears of the sky. One day, you'll forget that you held me captive in your arms, like a thing that was yours. So to tell me this, have the sweetest words. Wait, my love, until night falls. Rondell to Mrs. R.G. Flaubert was said to have loved both men and women. So I'm suspecting that Mrs. R.G. was a woman with whom she'd had a romance that went south. Rondell to Madame R.G. With your bewitching eyes, whose dark beauty haunts us, with the seductive grace of the most charming fowler, you're like the lovely buds of the enchanting blue countries, with your bewitching eyes, whose dark beauty haunts us. To ease all pains, your voice is lulling, and one thinks you care, but you cause such grief with your bewitching eyes. And this is my last poem. There is it's a sonnet to a man named Pierre Loti. Pierre Loti was a French novelist and also a French naval officer who traveled all over the world in his work. And he wrote these novels of great detail and one could argue empathy for the places he was visiting. And Faubert read his novels and was a great fan of his. There's a reference to Spahi. It's a word that to describe the members of the French cavalry that were drawn from North Africa. So these were North African soldiers fighting for the French in both World War I and World War II. There's just a brief reference. Sonnet to Pierre Loti. Oh, dear artist, oh, creator of dreams, to my soul, your solitary soul spoke. And I followed you, a sweet and sad exile, in the far-flung lands where you went restlessly. I knew the Spahi who lay heaving on the shore. I felt him die in my deserted heart and took in his goodbye, his veiled gaze in the grave and calm hour of the rising moon. O pilgrim of anchor, I followed you. I saw the great lotuses, the pagodas of gold, the deep eyes of the saddened bells, who weep in silence and sigh soundlessly, dreaming of a joy they will never achieve. Loti, I resemble your disillusioned ones. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for such a wonderful reading. They were so beautiful, so vivid. Thank you so much. I'm going to link your website and your two books in the chat for anyone who might want to take a look at them. Thank you so much. Up next, we have Jennifer Markell. Jennifer Markell's first poetry collection, Samsara, published by Turning Point 2014, was named Must-Read Book of Poetry by the Massachusetts Book Award in 2015. Her second book, Singing at High Altitude, was published in November 2021 by the Main Street Rag. Jennifer's work has been included in Bitter Oleander, the Cimarron Review, Consequence, RHINO, and the Women's Review of Books, among others. Before joining the board, she received the Barbara Bradley and Firman Houghton Poetry Awards from the New England Poetry Club. Jennifer has worked in community mental health and as a therapist for over 20 years. She lives with her husband and 3 well-versed cats. Signed copies of her book can be purchased directly on her website, jennifermarkell.com. They're also available from the publisher at mainstreetrag.com. Thank you and welcome.
Mute, there we go. Okay, thanks Carmellite for hosting today, and many thanks to NEPC for offering this reading series. And much appreciation to everyone who came out this afternoon and hanging in there with these Zoom poetry readings. It will be so great to gather again in person soon. It is Valentine's Day tomorrow, so I'm going to say that I'm tickled pink to be reading with Danielle and Lloyd. And right now I'll be reading mostly from my new book with a few newer poems mixed in. 2 a.m. The wind moves, the branches move, the mind moves, vigilant as an Arctic fox tuned to what's hidden in ice. Mind's a hunter on the prowl and a gatherer sorting memories underground. It travels back for a faithless lover jumps the cue to the future. Mind likes to remind you can't survive on love, though you can starve for it. Late at night, the mind confronts itself, ruminates on the fate of hairless bipeds. It sighs at a melting icicle, flies to the sun. The Sagrada Familia Cathedral in Barcelona, which some of you may have had the privilege of seeing, has these incredible, unique organic shapes and forms. It's a shrine to nature and one of the most beautiful structures I've ever stepped inside, designed by Anton Gaudí. Gaudí's hands, Sagrada Familia, Barcelona. His hands sculpted everything they could touch: chimneys and dinner plates, metal gates, curvaceous scroll, Gothic alphabets sprouting feet and wings. In webs and crevices, he felt beauty breathe. In dusty remains, he saw starburst resembling flowers, resembling longing, a bell tower to join heaven and earth. Granite columns burst into trees. A forest pours light in endless supply. You rest with St. Francis while a crest floats a crown above your head. You're lost in this grove where panes of glass sift saffron and lavender. Golden orbs nestle in clefts, suns that see in all directions, see you among the many passing through, stepping between shadows, shape-shifting doubt, and all you can't hold. Okay. Hard to get a bead on God. I wish I had Gaudí's faith. Hard to get a bead on God. Sometimes try belief like a hat, tilting to see how things appear under a brim. Run the finger along a hollow edge and stride through sullied alleys haloed by faith. Sometimes rest on a hard bench with the atheists, Darwin and Marx, Simone de Beauvoir. Consider evolution, transcendent hand, siren song of paradise. Goethe drops by. If God exists, time to review the plan. Raptors fly in and out of dreams. For every answer, 1,000 questions expand as time on earth recedes. Sing in the shower. Janice and Aretha join in the space between words. Aretha looks divine in her feathered hat. So as a therapist and writer, I'm always trying to look closely and see things through other lenses and different angles. I came across some photographs of everyday subjects like dandelions seen through, pictures taken through a microscope. The completely altered view was something I felt I had to write about. So here's your, instead of looking through the dictionary, diatoms are single-celled algae and stoma are tiny openings in the outer layer of plant tissue. Up close, a dandelion's fruiting head, a jeweled amphora. Spinach tissues blue, mosaic, too beautiful to eat. Stoma on coneflower like points on a map. What's laid bare by a microscope. A pine needle's thirst seen at the infection site. Brown fungus burrowing through another season's drought. For now, the lobed algae live on, traveling in pairs, and pollen grains gather on anthers. Tucked inside feathers of whistling ducks, diatoms gorge on sunlight. So as Carmellite mentioned in the introduction, I worked for over a decade at a community mental health center, mostly with kids and families. And this poem is dedicated to a child that I worked with who was just one of too many kids trying to make sense of violence in her small world. Canary plum for Vanessa. She runs her finger across tubes of paint, tosses them on the kitchen table where a clatter of color spreads out. Midnight blue overlaps umber, something new and nameless, like the look on her mother's face the night the police shot her uncle. Mauve and periwinkle, named by someone long before she was born, when she was just a dab in the swirl. Yellow bleeds red, seeps orange. Words keep changing too. Sometimes it's victim, other times survivor. Words gather themselves in strands, like the crystal beads her mother wears to capture the light. Every night she comes home from the hospital saying, soon, soon. And this next poem is new. It's not in my book. Was in progress. I'm hoping it's out of progress now. Notes from a plan to colonize the moon. We leave behind the walrus, wolf, shy albatross, flippers, fur, and wings. Their calls at night, bellow and yip. We've culled the hives, siphoned honey for the lunar lunchroom. Up here, we hop and hover, reproduce with assistance, discover a crater to accommodate our litter. Though we'll miss the sweet sedges and evening primrose, the future's titanium, helium-3. Take heart, lizards and harlequin beetles. See how we make over her face. See the jaw shine like new. Okay. Some of you might have been to Bear Week, which is a celebration of the gay community in Provincetown, when the town fills up with burly, hairy men and their fans from all over the world for a week of revelry. For the Provincetown Bears. Fiesta yellow, lush chartreuse, choose a palette, name your color, polish your leather and growl at last call, lights out on Commercial Street. Ride your Harley into daylight, down to the bay where swimmers stroke a rainbow gouache. Follow the leader who lumbers in purple, a Buddha plum. A squadron of squid kiss his feet. Blink at the sticks, masquerading as a jetty. Tell stories of how you escaped. Inside a thought bubble. Dreams sometimes come with a free trial of something you thought you wanted. Your fingernails paint themselves red and grow into claws. You shave your head so you can feel closer to the sun. An imagined lover hands you a glimpse. While you sleep, a wig machine weaves regret into silk. A quilter hand stitches a gathered view. The future hides with speckled moths, pineapples, ambulance, flamboyant scarves, and fearless swans swimming backwards like dreams. And this poem is called Leaf Litter. Tomorrow, my father will lie down with flowers. All summer, I've searched the canopy, looking for something. Sometimes I think I see it, but then the wind. The sycamore sheds untimely litter, August leaves moldering with prodigal marigolds. Lacewing flies dip into hedges, lift over lonely kitchens, hospital rooms exhausted with dreams. I sit with a thin washcloth, wiping my father's forehead, hold the hand that's not his hand. Nurses flit like shadows in reverse. Crickets chip the dark. Poppies in a vase, unswayed, stoic as children building oak leaf fortresses in the street, cars barreling through. Early this morning, sweeping leaves, The call came from the hospital. Come now if you want to see him. A few more here. Sometimes coupling is not easy. This poem is called Amber and Cobalt. Survivor of asteroids, mass extinctions, endless ages of ice, horseshoe crabs pair up in ancient armor. From muddy bunkers, salt marsh mined with hungry herons, fiddler crabs hoist cumbrous claws to woo. After the quarrel, we trade beach glass, smoothed in the swash. Amber and cobalt bind the light. Two more. So this is a love poem for Jay, Alhambra Lime. Here it is, stealing home to you across the Atlantic, defying time zones, joyride on the conveyor belt past customs agents undetected. You'd noticed a lime in an eddy of wilted leaves. Heady with arabesques, you stroked its simple skin as if inside lay a jewel from the palace on the hill of the sun. It was late September. The Puerta de las Granadas courtyard glittered with fallen limes. We held each other in the infinity pool, skin to skin in aqua glint. And this is my last poem for today. This is a pretty much brand new poem. Ars Poetica. It turns out meaning is overrated. What makes sense matters less than the sound of rain in a runnel or a bullet's ache inside the barrel. No one's philosophy can unchop a tree. He thinks he's over his ex, but when she smiles, his teeth crumble like ruins. She stays up late, compressing love into a sonnet, someone she fell for on a train. Up at 6, stars gone, the man in Eureka, shaved now, ready for coffee. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for such a wonderful reading. I'm going to link the link to her books below. So please, everyone go to the group for the chat to look at the books. Thank you again for reading. Next up, we have Lloyd Schwartz. Sorry, I lost. Bio. All right. Lloyd Schwartz is Poet Laureate of Somerville, Mass. Frederick S. Troy Professor of English Emeritus at UMass Boston, and an arts critic for NPR's Fresh Air and WBUR. He's received the Pulitzer Prize for Criticism and Guggenheim, National Endowment for the Arts, and Academy of American Poets Fellowships for his poetry. He's a principal editor of the works of Elizabeth Bishop. His latest collection is On Who's First? New and Selected Poems, U of Chicago Press. Thank you, and please welcome Lloyd.
Thank you, Carmellite, and thank you, Mary and Hillary and Linda and Danielle and Jennifer. Wonderful readings. All my colleagues on the board of, or at least on the advisory board of New England Poetry Club, and I have to say, I wouldn't be Poet Laureate if it weren't for Mary and Hillary and Linda. So you've made my life very happy these last couple of years. I'm going to read, that was just beautiful readings, Danielle and Jennifer. I'm was so marvelous to hear you read those poems. I'm going to read 5 poems about my mother. And the first one is called She Forgets. The one who told me about the Holocaust, who taught me moral distinctions, who gave me music and told me jokes, is in a nursing home, lonely, scared, surrounded only by people so much worse off, inarticulate, incapacitated, drooling. She thinks she's in a crazy house. She's not crazy. She's there. I put her there because she can't take care of herself, can't be left alone. She's old. She forgets. She forgets her medicine. She forgets what she's not supposed to eat. She forgets what day it is. She remembers who she is and who she was and knows she's not herself. She can't remember what's wrong with her. What's wrong with me, honey? Or why she's there, but she knows her brain isn't working right. Her brain needs air. Oxygen has a hard time squeezing through her hardened arteries. So her blood congeals. Little clots cause little strokes, which destroy her memory. Aspirin, which thins the blood and helps keep the oxygen flowing, might help her remember. But she's old. Part of her stomach has turned upside down. Her food gets stuck in her chest, blocks her breath. She panics, forces herself to vomit, which makes her bleed, which damages her heart. A simple operation could fix her stomach, but doctors won't operate on someone with a damaged heart. And aspirin makes her bleed, so she can't take aspirin. So she forgets. I live in another city. Once, after I came to visit, she wasn't thinking about her food. She ate too much or too fast, and the food wouldn't go down. So she panicked, forced herself to vomit, and had a heart attack. She was in the hospital for 3 weeks, which she doesn't remember. So I've had to put the one who gave me music and told me jokes, who taught me moral distinctions and warned me never to forget the Holocaust. I've had to put her in a nursing home, a crazy house, where she's scared and lonely, where she stares out the window and asks, "What day is today? Why can't I go home? What's wrong with me, honey? Why am I here?" The Two Horses, a memory, and this is all my mother speaking. The Two Horses. You said you had lunch in Pittsfield. Was it on North Street? That reminds me of when we lived on the farm. It must be 80 years ago. We went to a one-room schoolhouse. Didn't you drive past it once? Each row was a different grade. I sat in the first seat of the first row. The teacher's name was Miss Brown. She was so pretty. I wonder if she's still alive. The day before we left the farm, our cat disappeared. We couldn't find her anywhere. I was sad for weeks. 3 months later, she showed up at our new house in Pittsfield. Robbins Avenue. I can't think of the number now. My sister was in New York. She didn't like the people she was living with, so she'd visit us. She fell in love with the young man who lived next door. Morris, your uncle Morris. They got married and moved to Cleveland. They're both gone now, aren't they? You know, I can't picture her. A few years later, we moved to New York. This just jumped into my mind. I must have been 3 years old. We were still in Russia. Mir, a small town, but famous for its yeshiva. My oldest brother, Joe, took our horses down to the river. They were the 2 best horses in the town. My father had a phaeton, a beautiful old buggy. He was like a taxi driver. He took people to Minsk or Vilna. That day, he was at the station, the passenger station, waiting for customers. My brother was still just a kid. He must have been washing the horses in the river. I can remember it was a hot day. Maybe he was giving them a drink. And while I was watching, the reins got caught around a pole in the river. The horses kept twisting around that pole, kept twisting the reins around that pole. It was slippery. The reins kept sliding down under the water, and they were pulling the horses down with them. I ran into town and got my father, who came running back with a knife in his teeth. He jumped into the river with all his clothes on. He took the knife and sawed away at the reins until he finally cut through. He saved the horses. I haven't thought about this in 1,000 years. It's like a dream. You get up, it's forgotten. Then it all comes back. Didn't I ever tell you? Look at me. I'm starting to cry. What's there to cry about? Such an old, old memory. Why should it make me cry? He tells his mother what he's working on. I'm writing a poem about you. You are? What's it about? It's the story about your childhood, the horses in the river. The ones that nearly drowned? I saved them. You told it to me just a few weeks ago. I should dig up more of my memories. I wish you would. Like when I lived on the farm and one of the girls fell down the well? Yes. I forget if it was Rose or Pauline. It was a deep well. I remember that story. Have you finished your poem? I'm still working on it. You mean you're correcting it with commas and semicolons? Exactly. When can I see it? As soon as it's finished. Is it an epic? It's not that long. No, I mean all my thoughts, the flashes of what's going through my life, the whole family history, living through the woe, the river and the water. I know. Will it be published? I have to finish it first. It's better to write about real life. That's more important than writing something fanciful. I try to write all my poems about real life. You see, the apple never falls far from the tree. I guess not. You're my apple. There's probably a worm crawling through that apple. Then it's got something sweet to chew on. Well, You're my tree. Yes, I'm your tree. You're an apple. I'm a tree. And I'll read two more. This is called No Orpheus. When he sang of what had passed, the trees would lean toward him. He could suspend the suffering of the damned. He could bring back the dead. Don't look back. Hell is a spotless room overlooking the ocean. She wants out. I'm heading for nowhere. What do I have to look forward to? She used to have a future and a past. I'm lost. I'm like a stranger to myself. I'm an unstationary pedestal. My marbles are slowly rolling away. She's thrown out family photos, no longer recalls her husband or her maiden name. Still, she wants him to lead her back. When am I going to see you? Are we a long distance apart from one another? He wants her back. He wants her back. If it took only not looking back to lead her back, it would be easy not to look back. But if helping her look back is the one way he knows to help her back, then he needs to help her look back. Where else could she look? I'll try not to remember too many things. I'll just remember what I can. Do we? Don't we have more he wishes he knew than what we can look back to? And the last poem, the shortest, Her Waltz. And it's my mother speaking again. Her waltz. This is my dream. I'm dancing. Do you know how to dance? Do you like to dance? Waltzing, it's like electricity. It hurts when I walk, so I pick up a chair and I start to waltz. I look in the mirror, and there I am, dancing with a chair. I say to the mirror, I'm not so old. But the mirror says, yes, you are. You're old. You're nearly 90 years old. What are you doing waltzing around with a chair? Now, isn't that silly? An old lady. This is my dream. I see myself in the mirror waltzing with a chair. And that's the end of my dream. I once knew how to dance. I once knew how to waltz. And now I shall bid you good night. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lloyd, for wonderful reading. Everyone, I've linked the website for his latest book. So please look in the chat for the link. Thank you so much to everyone. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Lloyd. Before the reading began, we contemplated a Q&A. I said yes, that I was open to it. And so please, everyone, please stick around for the Q&A as well as the open mic. I've listed a few questions that I wanted our wonderful readers to answer. Nothing major, just, just for fun. So first, I want to know, how did you manage fitting writing with other demands of your time? Are you good at managing your time? Please feel free to start wherever you can.
Well, I guess I have my mic on, and I'm terrible about managing my time. And I think mainly when my poems, when something hits me that I just need to write about, I just try to shove everything else away, and my writing takes over. But I'm a very bad role model to my students or other writers. I know I encourage people to take the time, have a couple of hours every day or every week. But it's not what I do.
I'm also terrible at managing time. So I used to have, a date with myself where I'd sit down no matter what, and I'd like have to stay at that desk, and I'd either write nothing or I'd write something. But I haven't done that in a long time. I don't know exactly why. My habits are strange with writing, but every now and then something does build up, and it's like, okay, I have to get back to the desk and just do some writing. There's certain pressure, whether it's external pressure, I'm meeting with my writing group and, they're expecting something, or internal pressure, something just feels like it has to be said. I just want to do this thing that I love to do, even if it's hard to do. But there's a lot of time in between that probably could be more disciplined.
Yeah, I'm with Team Lloyd and Jennifer. I'm not great at it either, but like Jennifer, I have a writing group, and it forces me to make work that I must submit. I feel the pressure of that, and that's one of the reasons why I joined this particular group. And then sometimes I take time when I can, like a week or two, to just work on a project. But I have friends who are religious about like getting in an hour or two, an hour and a half each day. I wish I could, but that's just not my life.
Danielle, did that happen with your translations as well, or did that whole project just kind of take over?
Oh, that's a good question. For me, translation is not like writing poetry. It's scholarly academic work. So I can do translation work like, for 15 minutes or 20 minutes every day, but not my own poetry.
So beautiful. It doesn't sound like academic work.
Well, that's the hope. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, my next question. Where is the child that you used to be? Inside of you still, or gone? I feel with poetry, there's a demand to keep that door of your childhood open, and I took this question from Pablo Neruda.
Can you say it again?
Where is the child that you used to be? Inside of you still, or gone?
Definitely inside. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. My poems often go back in time and tap into childhood, family. I think, yeah, I don't think the past is ever past, as I guess that was Faulkner, right? Yeah.
Somewhere in there. I mean, I can remember my childhood more easily than I can remember what I had for breakfast today.
Yeah, I think the child, is there insofar as there's play and experimentation in making poems. And I think that kids are very open to the world. And I think poets as well are kind of very open to the world. So I think they share that in common.
Yeah.
And last question. How do you take criticism from poetry workshops, and how have they revolutionized your writing? Also, if you have any favorite poetry workshops, welcoming and suitable for those who have not yet published any work, please feel free to let us know.
I've never been in a poetry workshop.
Oh.
I've only given them. And I would say, I mean, Danielle and I have both taught at have taught poetry workshops, and Danielle at Leslie and me at UMass Boston. I see at least one poet in the audience today who has lived through poetry workshop, and I love teaching them, and I love the conversation about poetry. But I guess I was in a poetry workshop when I was an undergraduate, but I didn't like it very much. But I think they're great, and I just really haven't had that experience of being at the receiving end.
I've been in the same poetry workshop since 2005, I think, the Jamaica Palm Poets, and we all look a little older than we did then, but we're still doing it, and we have new people, coming in, so we get fresh vision, and some people fall away and so forth, but that's been great. I mean, I think if criticism is done kindly and honestly, you have to have that balance. It's a great thing, and it gets easier, I think, over time to take in the criticism and not let it get to you.
Let me just as a postscript, let me just add that I think having friends whom you can show your poetry to, whom you trust, and you trust will be very honest with you, is absolutely indispensable. It's not that we do this in a vacuum.
Yeah, I think workshops are very worthwhile. I think finding the right workshop for you is important. People with whom you share maybe certain kinds of aesthetic positions or values or experiences, or more heterogeneous workshops too. So really just finding the right fit, and also having a sense of who, as Lloyd mentioned, who you trust with your work, who you feel will understand your work and give you some really honest feedback. I think that's really important to most, if not all writers. And we happen to be in a really wonderful area for literary activity. So there are tons of workshops. So finding just the right workshop for you.
Yeah. Hillary just posted in the chat that the NEPC, the New England Poetry Club, it's a monthly workshop, right? I think it's a Tuesday. If you go to the website, and anybody can drop in, right? Yeah, so check the NEPC website.
All right, thank you guys so much for your answers. I really enjoyed them. Thank you again for today, for such a wonderful reading. And I posted the list of the open mic again in the chat. So first on our open mic list is John Hoglerson. So John, if you're still here for the reading, please, you can turn off your microphone and start.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Carmellite?
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to thank Danielle, Lloyd, and Jennifer for their readings today. One of the great things about Zoom poetry readings is they can be had at any time in any place. And while I share Jennifer's desire to return to in-person readings, fortunately because of Zoom, we're able to continue these poetry readings through these last 3 years of the pandemic. The only poem, right, one poem per person, that I'm going to read today is from my book, Convictions of the Heart, that was published last year. There is an island off the southwest coast of Greece called Hydra. And before 2020, I would go there annually to do my own writing sabbaticals. And because I haven't been there now in 3 years, I thought I'd read a poem that relates to one of the visits I made there. This is called Hydra, October 2010. The fishing boats scuttle daily in and out of the Horseshoe Harbor, wooden and fiberglass crabs seeking a shoal of sponge or squid. Tourist shops are bringing in their postcard century stanchions and wobbly wood tables with multicolored t-shirts bearing the island's name. Old timers stroke sweat from bearded chins as they play pinochle and backgammon for beer and sausage in the old bars behind the yacht-lined harborfront. The air has become burdened by the thick weight of an alien humidity. It clings to the linings of the lungs like the soot-soaked clothes on our bodies. And like the ancient rapacious pirates buried unceremoniously in unmarked graves, this bullying sun of global burning has stormed the island's pine forests and seaboard, drying the groves to tinder while pushing up the beach's sandy skirts so the Aegean can take by force areas once beyond its greedy tidal grasp. Tavernas and bars along the harborfront will soon shut their double doors until April, when the poppies and the tourists will both bloom again, and the winter winds from Egypt and Israel will have blown this bastard mugginess westward, along with some sudden yet expected Sahara sand. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next on our open mic is Carla Schwartz.
Hi, everybody. What a fantastic afternoon of poetry so far. And I have a book coming out in June from Finishing Line Press, and it's called Signs of Marriage. And this is a poem from that book, and it is a love poem for Valentine's Day, and it's called Stones. You began with just one rock, mid-puddle of the front yard. We named it Rock Hudson. But then came two more to bookend the mud, Rock Around the Clock and Elizabeth Taylor. I loved the line of them, the symmetry. I never questioned the origins. You just arrived there at our sunken front yard, one large rock in the wheelbarrow at a time, until this was no random arrangement. You said you had one rule of rock. The flat side always goes down, so that hump side up, a rock might settle into its new home. Next, you made a line of rocks to guide the why of our two stone paths. A kind of smile, I said, a rock smile. And you smiled, and the next day and the next, two more rocks to make the eyes. A few weeks later, a nose appeared, a little bent, a little sad, but a nose. Then the effort changed. You graduated from pry bar and shovel to blocks, straps, and a come-along. Soon you urged 1,000-pound boulders to find their new sweet spot in our yard. most flat side down, until I told you I liked the flat side. So we pried, blocked, and tipped together until one flat face shone back at us. One morning you brought me to the backyard and showed me the aisle you had created with the stones you'd moved. I said, well, if we ever get married, this will be our aisle. And you rolled your eyes, but later handed me something palm-sized with a plainer face, a glittery stone of mica and quartz. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carla. Wonderful poem. Next up, Lean VT.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to Danielle and Jennifer and Lloyd. Just wonderful. Now I'm going to try to be more disciplined in my poetry writing. This is a poem that I wrote after a conversation with a friend and colleague about our mothers. She said something about her mother, and I said, gee, my mom used to do that too. So I wrote this poem, and then she wrote one about her mother, and we didn't show them to each other until after they were written, and they were strangely mirrors of each other. So this is called Renee and Marcella. They never met, of course, your mother and mine. All the same, they might have shared a drink at the Plaza in New York or the Hopkins Club in my hometown, Baltimore. Your mother, the editor at ease in Cambridge, making her way through the yard at dusk with her leather handbag and one of those green drawstring sacks all the Harvard folks carried. Your mother's would have been full of manuscripts and the New Yorker. She'd have worn a smart wool coat nipped in at the waist. Navy, if that was the color that year. My mother never saw Boston till I was 16. She thought of it as a distant northern city. Never gave it much thought until Jack Kennedy won the nomination when she was 48. She wore schoolteacher clothes, sensible shoes for work. She favored Eisenhower jackets and full skirts, smoked Kents, and carried a big purse, never a book bag. Her pupils' tests and her lesson plans were stacked up on the dining room table, the grade book at the bottom of the pile. Her handwriting was perfect. If they'd met, our mothers might have chatted about the Chesterfield coats popping up in the stores. Rather mannish, they might have said. No feminine lines like the Dior new look that came in after the war. They might have liked driving gloves, the small opening at the palm. They'd compare notes, say raising a daughter was always a challenge, but they had such hopes for us. They'd lean back in their cushioned chairs, cross their legs, check their hose for ladders, and seeing none, lift their daiquiri glasses gracefully, saying, here's looking at you, kid.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Next up, we have John Lee.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, thank you, Jennifer, Danielle, Lloyd, for the excellent readings, and for the rest of you for staying around for the open mics. I'm going to be reading out of my latest book of poetry in Desiderado, this out of JCAR Press, so recently that I haven't even finished breaking the spine on the book yet. So this is not an inaugural reading, but very close to it. This is a book-length meditation. I'm only going to read a very, very small section out of this. The you, by the way, in here is my children, because the entire book is dedicated and addressed to my children, family lessons, environmental ethic, etc. Your great-grandfather on my mother's side dropped bombs from a B-17 to stop a greater Holocaust. When he got home, he decided that was enough and spent the rest of his life delivering beer for Lucky Lager. You should have seen him. At 60 years old, he could lift the back end of a car off the ground and barrel chest a full keg of beer into a fridge. Then at 62, he got a hernia hoeing garden weeds. And a decade after that, a quadruple bypass. The last time I saw him, he came up to visit me in college, took me to the training grounds where he learned to be a soldier. Only husks of buildings and cracked concrete pads remained, the rest long abandoned and faded into forest. Though he hadn't seen the place in 50 years, he remembered every step, showed me where they slept and ate, where they did their morning push-ups, how over here on this cracked pad, they were taught how to mount a chopper and splint a leg. And over here, where a 10-foot ridge rose 100 yards away, they were taught marksmanship. Every man given a rifle and a magazine and pointed at a cutout of an airplane taped to a pole mounted in the back of a jeep that drove like hell behind a ridge. How all the soldiers aimed their guns and shot for real at what they knew to be pretend. And then, in the middle of the field, your great-grandfather stooped and ran his fingers through the dirt, and as if he'd known it would be there, dropped the cold ghost of a brass casing in my hand. And what was there to do but stare at the remnants we knew would never go away? Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. Next on our list is Sarah Baker, or Backer, so sorry.
It's actually a backer.
Backer.
No problem. This is a short poem, and I will try to read it slowly. Surprises. A tree fell across the driveway on a full moon. A second tree fell a month later, another full moon, landing in the same spot. A hawk flew hard toward me, hit glass, and rose to fly again. A bullet flew past me while I practiced piano. The window broke. Whom I thought hated me actually loved. I didn't know until a freak and fatal accident. How much life is schedules, to-do lists, illusions under moving clouds.
Thank you, Sarah. Next is Michael Ego.
I'm Michael Igo, and this is called Another Reason, and it was published in an English language publication from the Netherlands called The Amphibian. Different reason. We're on to the next square, advancing much further, to dwell there quietly. Will we say things clearer as someone watches? To arch and bend with every signal you send my way, as my firm grip relaxes in another hometown. But for all I know, it seems like lying. Never mind the pressure contained in the breezes, because I can't walk without those hands that move in a circle. I think I deserve to know exactly what you're doing. Then you might find me, even in the darkest of syrups. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Next is Kathy Desjardins.
You're muted there.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I have a Valentine's Day poem, and it has the word furs in it, and that's F-U-R-Z-E. It's not like Venus and furs, so just, it's called EKG. We're together in the kitchen when you say, you talk to your new doctor, the one who ordered up an EKG because he said he'd heard a skip, a stutter. Most likely it's within a normal range. What's normal in our undercover pumps? Part mystery fist, blossom, cage. Once I saw a tattooed heart clumped on a woman's bare back, not a Valentine, but a thick muscle in full spurt. aortic wad inked in red and blue lines. She said she loved our corporeal hearts, the beauty in anatomy. Anyway, you tell me, my doctor scanned the blips and says I'm fine. Let's look, I say. So you hoist your shirt up from your hips. I place a palm curved to fit among your soft gray curling furs, spider fingers scrying for a tidal beat. Why had I never sensed amiss when I so loved to lie with you, nest my palm to feel the thump there? I touch it now, rueful with what I know, ways I thought I could protect, repair, mistaken. But a new grasp of lub-a-dub, all unnoticed, our deep rhythms change. And in what we claim as hub of love, imperfect is our normal range. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Next on our list is Stephen Hoenig.
Thank you. So this is a new poem, and it picks up some themes that have been poetized today, but it's a harsher look than many of you have afforded these issues. The name of the poem is All About Life. There is so much common wisdom about life and death, sardonic asides, dark aphorisms, proof it is something on the mind, sometimes. Quote, all you need is your health. Life exists on the sharp edge of an infinitely sharp knife, a balancing act that takes no prisoners. Slip off and you are gone. Step down too hard and you are cleft in twain. Quote, life sucks and then you die. You are not issued a balancing beam, sweat obscures your view. The knife is curved and serrated, and someone has taken your shoes. Quote, life is what happens while you're making plans. My knife is whetted by blood, honed by fear, rusted by tears, angered by experience, informed by a desire to jump. Quote, here today, gone tomorrow. I am dancing on the edge of my knife as you on yours. Stay sharp, perhaps a poor admonition. Quote, live as you expected to live 100 years, but might die tomorrow. My knife is whispering about tomorrow, but it's a tease. It is beginning to wriggle beneath me. It is causing other knives to kill the ones I love. Quote, we never live. We are always in the expectation of living. You, I'm talking to you. Keep your fucking hands off the handle of my knife. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen. We have two more readers on our list. Karen Klein.
Can you hear me now? Thank you, Carmellite. I'm Karen Klein, and I want to add my thanks to Danielle, Jennifer, Lloyd, and all the people who just read. This is a very rich afternoon of beautiful, wonderful, very different poetry. Interestingly, Stephen, the poem I'm reading is called The Facts of Life. It follows your poem, but it's quite different. There are no knives in it that are literal. It's part of a new series I'm doing called This Body. And in this body, I write about our appendix, our vestigial organs that are useless to us. In doing that, and I'm not going to read that initial poem, I discovered that the plural of appendix is appendices, the kinds of things we add to texts, for instance, in books. We have appendix 1, appendix 2, and so on. And I just thought the overlap was very funny. So my poem The Facts of Life is Appendix 1. My best friends were Paul and Ralph until we were 7. Our favorite game, stealing apples from the neighbor's backyard. I hadn't read Augustine's Confessions yet, didn't know his apple stealing days represented first awareness of sinfulness. To get the apples, we had to climb over a metal fence, taller than we were. Empty spaces between wires fit our kid shoes. That last day, I went first. At the fence top, lifting one leg to jump over, my summery dress slipped up, exposing my little girl white underpants crotch. Below me, behind me, I heard the boys laughing. Jumped down to the other side, the fence now forever between us. Still heard their laughter, not with me, at me, cried. Ran home, told my mom. She dutifully explained what married people did. What she did and my future might be did not disturb me, but not Daddy and Grandpa. My beloved men couldn't do anything so horrible. And I couldn't understand why seeing my underpants made boys laugh. Still can't. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen. Finally on our list is CZ Finley.
Hi, it should say in parens Finn, because that's what I go by, but I couldn't make the change. Privileged to be here. It's been a lovely afternoon. This is a very short poem. I stumble as the evening does, shadows deepening, moments clung, stepping into the flat window of a threshold, wherever darkness hides. There are so many shades of gray. We painted them as art students, laying them out in little squares. I've always loved gray. It's pure, smooth company. My cat, the rooms, the afternoon, in pixels after a bright thing. The persistence of it, floating, the cape of soft edges, beyond which I cannot see, but carry inside the shiny tin. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Finn, for this wonderful reading. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. And I posted in the chat once again, as Hillary previously mentioned, we have a workshop. It's a monthly peer workshop that is open to all members of the New England Poetry Club. The next one is February 22nd. It's from 7 to 9 p.m. You can please go to our website to sign up for the workshop and also have a list of all of our upcoming events. Thank you again for attending. Thank you again to Danielle, Lloyd, and Jennifer for their wonderful, wonderful poetry. And we'll see you at our next event. Our next event is for March 13th from 3 to 5 p.m. same time on a Sunday as well. And we'll be welcoming Kevin Gallagher, Gail Mazur, and Lynn Schmidt. Thank you everyone for attending, and we'll see you at our next reading.